On the morning of September 11th, 1978, 32-year-old Gerald Gallego wakes up his 21-year-old girlfriend, Charlene Williams, and tells her that today is the day to make his fantasies a reality.
He had this idea that he wanted to kidnap young girls because he was very unhappy with her. He was telling her she didn't have anything to offer him, and so he was getting her in a position to be able to go shopping for young women.
Charlene went along quickly enough with these desires because she wanted to please him any way that she could, even if it meant giving the go-ahead to turn these sex fantasies into reality.
Later that same day, Sacramento police receive a call concerning two missing girls, 16-year-old Kippy Vaught and 17-year-old Rhonda Scheffler.
Rhonda Scheffler and Kippy Vaught went shopping at Country Club Plaza Shopping Center. Were due to return home that evening, and they failed the show. Families on both sides went to the shopping center and found their car abandoned behind one of the stores. And it seemed very suspicious. The circumstances were suspect right off the bat, that this was something more than just a couple missing girls.
We located witnesses who saw both Kippy and Rhonda get into a red Firebird with two black individuals. And one of the witnesses said Kippy actually waved at her through the back window of the car. And it seemed like a very valuable sighting that, in fact, she knew the person.
Investigators follow the lead, not realizing it is false. Two days after Kippy Vaught and Rhonda Scheffler are reported missing, a migrant worker finds their bodies in a meadow 20 miles southeast of Sacramento. An autopsy reveals both girls were raped, then bludgeoned and shot to death. The brutality of the crimes does not go unnoticed by the public.
This particular case was a very high-profile case of the two young girls abducted in broad daylight in the shopping center. So we had a lot of leads. But our main lead was this red Pontiac Firebird. And there still were things that just didn't seem right about it. Sounded very interesting in the beginning, but it was a dead end.
The case goes cold. Meanwhile, Gerald Gallego's appetite for rape and murder has just begun.
Gerald is definitely the quintessential sexual sadist and sociopath. He derived great pleasure out of inflicting pain upon others. Once he was able to achieve that, he wanted this victim out of his system right then and there so he could move on to someone else. Charlene was initially shocked after the first victims, but she was too caught up in the whole process to do anything but continue to cooperate with Gerald, fearful that as easily as Gerald was able to kill his first victims, he could kill her whenever he wanted.
A few weeks after the murders, Gerald Gallego and Charlene Williams decide to marry. They visit Gerald's 14-year-old daughter at his mother's house in Chico, California, to tell her the good news.
Gerald began molesting his daughter when she was 6 years of age. He was abused as a child and grew up to abuse his own child. Often you'll find that people who are abusers were abused themselves.
They show up at his mother's house. The mother calls the local police because she became aware of Gerald molesting his daughter. The stepfather got his rifle and threatened to kill him and wanted him out of there. They flee to Reno. And they get married under an assumed name. And the name Gerald is used in the Stephen file, which is actually a cousin of Charlene. And Charlene's mother helped provide identification so they could use this name.
In Chico, police issue an arrest warrant for Gerald Gallego for multiple felony charges for the assault of his daughter. They learn that this is not Gerald's first run-in with the law. He has already been arrested 23 times for crimes ranging from robbery and sexual assault to escaping from prison. Authorities now know they are dealing with a violent felon and are determined to catch him. But when Chico police attempt to serve their warrant at Gerald's last known address, he is nowhere to be found. Police in Sacramento, California work the homicide of 2 teenage girls who disappeared from a mall parking lot. Both were raped, beaten with a blunt object, and shot in the head before being dumped in a field.
We had a lot of information coming in from the public, and so there was a lot of leads we were running down. They were basically dead ends. And the case kind of just remained there as a cold case for a while.
In nearby Chico, officers search for 32-year-old Gerald Gallego, who is on the run after charges are brought against him for raping his 14-year-old daughter. Gerald is no stranger to crime. His father was executed in Mississippi in 1955 for the murders of 2 police officers.
At one point, he made the comment that he could feel his father in him.
There's been theories tossed about regarding a genetic basis for criminality, the bad seed theory, and a number of studies have shown a strong correlation between heredity and homicidal tendencies.
Gerald is a serial womanizer who regularly threatens and abuses the women in his life.
Gerald's mother was a prostitute, and she was neglectful, cold, domineering. He gained a hatred toward women that resulted in his mistreatment of women over the years and his sexual fantasies that he developed over time. Gerald's childhood had a tremendous effect on his future. He was a victim of some serious child abuse.
"31-year-old Gerald Gallego meets Charlene Williams in September of 1977, just a few weeks shy of her 21st birthday, at the Black Stallion Card Room in Sacramento.
She'd grown up in a country club type of atmosphere where she came from a higher class of people than Gerald, who was pretty much a bartender. Frequenting the card clubs in Sacramento, she was really different night and day from Gerald. She was well educated. She made her way through life enabled to please people. So she's very small and petite compared to this fellow who perceived himself as being a real macho type of a person. He was what I call a chest beater.
She had a wild streak in her, and she wanted more. She hoped to escape the boredom and constraints of suburbia. She was looking for a way out. In Gerald, she found this bad boy image appealing to her.
Within a few weeks after meeting, Gerald moves into Charlene's apartment and quickly becomes controlling and abusive.
Gerald was that kind of person, and he was very good at manipulating females.
The two begin using drugs.
Substance abuse played a big role in the relationship between Charlene and Gerald, in the sense that they had a shared goal of getting high.
The relationship soon sours, compounded by the fact that Gerald is impotent.
With his sexual problems, they were willing to try all types of things. The sexual fantasies were a way to deal with the impotency, and this led to the notion that they could turn these sexual fantasies into reality.
He was a very selfish, demanding man who was frustrated. All of that came together to create in this man's mind this sick fantasy that he was going to have young girls, very young girls available that he could just have on tap as sexual slaves.
Charlene was happy to engage in these sex slave fantasies turned into reality because it would take the onus off of her. She wouldn't have to go out of her way to try to please him as much.
The warrant for the sexual abuse of Gerald's daughter is still active, but California authorities have no idea that Gerald Gallego is living in nearby Nevada as Stephen Robert File. The Gallegos lay low for several months, but all that changes on June 24th, 1979. In the summer of 1979, with the help of his wife, Charlene, Gerald Gallego picks up where he left off 9 months earlier with his plan to abduct women and keep them as sex slaves. On June 24th, Charlene approaches 14-year-old Brenda Lynn Judd and 13-year-old Sandra K. Colley at the Washoe County Fair and asks them if they want to make money distributing flyers. The girls say yes and follow her to the van.
Get in. Now, move.
Charlene acted as the bait to lure these unsuspecting victims. Gerald wanted his victims young because they were a reflection of his daughter that he molested for years. Once he could no longer do that, he turned to other young women that mirrored his daughter.
He had this idea that he wanted to kidnap young girls because he was very unhappy with her, telling her that she was very bad in bed.
He used Charlene to contact these young ladies and bring them back to the van, and when they got back to the van, Gerald took over.
That afternoon, relatives of Brenda Judd and Sandra Colley contact police when the girls never return from the fair. Charlene drives up Route 395 into California, some 25 miles northwest of Reno. Gerald walks off with the girls, leaving Charlene behind.
Help me out. Put the stuff in the back. Come on. Hurry up. Move over. Move. What's the matter with you? I don't believe you. Crying.
Gerald takes the girls out of the car one at a time, kills them with a hammer, blows to the head, and buries both bodies. They were operating in different jurisdictions and, in fact, different states. There was just no recognition that these cases were connected.
Authorities follow leads that take them to several states before the trail goes cold. 3 months later, Gerald and Charlene leave Reno and return to Sacramento using their assumed name, The Files.
After the murders were committed, Gerald and Charlene led as normal life as they could under the circumstances, but Gerald is addicted to killing, and for most serial killers, there is often no stopping the killer until the killer is either caught or killed.
Ten months later, on the morning of April 24th, 1980, Gerald wakes Charlene and again tells her it's time.
They actually went out shopping to look for young girls. They spent the good part of a morning at various places. They first went to one mall in Sacramento, and then they moved on to a school. And because it was morning time and most of the young girls were in school, they couldn't find anyone.
Gerald and Charlene eventually make their way to a mall in Citrus Heights, a Sacramento suburb.
This is Sunrise Mall, where Karen Twiggs and Stacy Renikin were abducted. Gerald pointed out, he said he wanted those girls. Charlene lured them out to the van where Gerald bound them up. And then they drove from here up Interstate 80 to Nevada.
While she was driving, he was in the back raping these girls.
When her daughter never returns home, Karen's mother reports her and Stacy missing to the Sacramento Police Department.
Karen Twiggs and Stacy Redigan were a couple young girls who had a reputation for being runaways and often did run away. So there was not an intense investigation going on. They were simply missing persons.
Their journey comes to an end in Limerick Canyon.
Gerald untied one of the girls and went off with her, and then in a short period of time came back and untied the second girl and took her. He had had the hammer with him. He took Charlene and made her go down to the location where the graves were.
Gerald murders his victims because this is part of his sexual fantasy. He's not just interested in sexually assaulting his victims, he actually wants to kill them. This is like the climax, if you will, of his sex slave fantasy.
2 months go by, and Gerald seems to be sated for the moment. In June, Gerald and a newly pregnant Charlene drive to Oregon for vacation. Along the way, they spot another expectant mother on the side of the road.
Linda Aguilar was a young lady who was hitchhiking in Gold Beach, Oregon. Gerald saw Linda and gave her a ride. Once she was in the van, Gerald took her to the back, and Gerald couldn't perform whatever he wanted to do with her. Eventually, they drove down onto the beach, and Gerald killed Linda with smashing her head with a rock.
Gerald's MO changed with Linda Aguilar. She was older than his previous victims and pregnant, and he still was willing to go after her. There was jealousy on Charlene's part for this particular murder more than any of the others, in that Gerald was willing to go after a pregnant woman and murder her.
2 weeks later, on June 22, 1980, tourists find the body of 21-year-old Linda Aguilar in a shallow grave.
According to the pathologist, she was actually still alive when he buried her in the sand.
By the time the details of Linda's agonizing death are revealed, Gerald and Charlene are back in Sacramento and looking for their next sex slave. After committing 7 murders in less than 2 years, Gerald and Charlene Gallego remain under the authorities' radar. The Sacramento County Sheriff's Office is unaware of the other crimes in the neighboring districts.
Gerald and Charlene were operating in 3 states, Nevada, Oregon, and California. And in this case, we were investigating our double murder, not knowing that it was connected to many other murders.
On July 16, 1980, after spending the day fishing, Gerald and Charlene go to the Sail Inn in West Sacramento. 34-year-old mother of 2, Virginia Mokel, is a favorite of the regulars at the Sail Inn. Charlene engages her in conversation. The Gallegos take her to their apartment, where Gerald repeatedly rapes her.
Charlene was able to disassociate herself with the reality of what was happening to these girls, because she was just more focused on making her own life easier as a result.
When Gerald is finished, he strangles Virginia. Then he and Charlene dispose of her body. Unfortunately for the Gallegos, Virginia's disappearance does not go unnoticed.
The Yolo County Sheriff's Department started an investigation. The circumstances were immediately suspicious, in that she didn't show up for home after turning and closing the bar. They went back to the bar, interviewed as many patrons as they could find who were in the bar that night.
Several people remember a very loud young couple named Stephen and Charlene File.
The detective from Yolo County called Charlene got her to come down to the station house and actually talk to her.
Charlene admits that she and her husband had stopped into the bar for a few drinks after a long day of fishing.
And she said she was in the bar that night, but she had drank so much she didn't really remember what was going on.
Charlene was able to use her charms to convince investigators that they knew nothing about it. So they were able to escape from capture at that point.
On July 27th, the bodies of Karen Twiggs and Stacy Redican, the girls who went missing from the Sunrise Mall 3 months earlier, are found in Limerick Canyon.
There was a man out here camping with 2 of his small children. While they were running around, one of them discovered like a foot bone that was protruding from the ground. And it was then that they discovered the bodies. And the sheriff's office came out and called in the Nevada Division of Investigation.
Both of the victims were bound with their arms behind their backs. During the autopsy, it was determined that both of these victims had been bludgeoned to death.
From there, it was a matter of going to Sacramento and doing backgrounds on the girls and trying to develop any information that we could.
Marriage records under Gerald Gallego.
Nevada investigators are unaware of the connection between their victims and the others in the surrounding area. In Sacramento, police get a break in the Virginia Mokel case when her body is found on October 2nd, 10 weeks after she disappeared.
She was found in an area along the Sacramento River. She'd been strangled.
Her arms are bound with fishing line.
The detective remembered the only people in the bar who would have been using fishing line that night was this Charlene and Stephen File.
As police comb through their records in an effort to track the Files down, they are unaware that Gerald and Charlene have split up. Charlene has sold the van and moved back in with her parents, while Gerald lives in a number of different apartments and motels. But when Gerald gets the urge, he knows who to call.
Charlene was far too tied up into this to just walk away. That wasn't an option, to just walk away from Gerald and just go about her life, or to report him to the authorities without implicating herself.
On November 1st, Gerald and a still pregnant Charlene head out in search of another sex slave.
They were just driving around, and just by chance, Mary Beth Sowers and Craig Miller were leaving a restaurant there. They were college sweethearts, planning to marry the next year. Gerald really is losing control. He's willing to go after whomever he wishes without regard to the consequences. Mary Beth Sowers was the person that Gerald was targeting. He saw Craig Miller as merely someone in the way that he had to get out of the way.
What are you doing? What,
Just go.
but what are you going to do? Move! Move!
Oh my God!
Authorities in Nevada and California are both investigating multiple murders perpetrated by serial killing couple Gerald and Charlene Gallego. The Gallegos' latest victims are Craig Miller and Mary Beth Sowers.
What are you going to move? Move!
After killing Craig, Gerald sexually assaults Mary Beth Sowers for the next several hours before Charlene drives to a secluded area where Mary Beth then meets the same fate as her fiancé. By morning, Craig Miller and Mary Beth Sowers are reported missing. Craig's body is found within a few hours, but there is no sign of Mary Beth.
My son, her brother, called in the morning about 8 or 9 o'clock and explained that Mary Beth was missing. And I said, well, it's some kind of a joke. And he said, no, Dad, it's no joke. That they found Craig's body this morning.
Sacramento police finally get a solid lead.
He abducted Mary Beth Sowers and Craig Miller in full view of witnesses who wrote down the license number of their car as they drove away with the kidnapped couple, which led immediately to their identity.
Police run the license plate number and show up at Charlene's parents' house later that morning. Charlene tells them the car was stolen.
She was so convincing. The detective there was unable to feel that there was any reason for suspicion. As soon as the detective leaves, Charlene informs Gerald, and that's when they make a run for it.
Gerald and Charlene needed money going across the country, made contact with her mother, who agreed to wire money to him in Omaha. The FBI agent became aware of this, and they were standing by when they picked the money up.
The Gallegos are arrested on November 17, 1980, for the murders of Mary Beth Sowers and Craig Miller. 5 days after the arrests, on November 22nd, the body of Mary Beth Sowers is found in a pasture. She has been shot 3 times in the head.
That was a struggle. You just don't want to lose a child, especially that way.
Even after they are arrested, Gerald continues to manipulate Charlene.
He was in one facility and she was in a women's facility in Sacramento County, and they would correspond by letters. He would write letters to her about how he was going to protect her and he loved her and a lot of stuff like that. At the same time, he was writing letters to people outside the jail saying that if she opened her mouth, he was going to take her down with him.
While in custody, Charlene gives birth to a son on January 17, 1981. Her parents are given custody of the baby. But as time passes, Gerald loses his hold over Charlene. Facing a possible death sentence, she decides to save herself. Charlene agrees to a plea bargain. But the prosecution is unprepared for what Charlene tells them.
She revealed there were 8 other murders that they had committed. This was a means for Charlene to break free of Gerald and his control over her.
As that information starts flowing in, you're kind of excited and you think, oh boy, now here's a chance that we may be able to solve this case.
When Charlene was trying to become a state witness, she gave information about at least 8 other murders than the 2 that they were charged with at the time, Mary Beth Sowers and Craig Miller. She talked something about a shopping center, and I knew immediately that we were talking about Kippy Vaught and Rhonda Scheffler. She talked about a hitchhiker in Gold Beach, Linda Aguilar, Stacy Redigan, and Karen Twiggs. Well, it went on and on from there, and it didn't take very long to realize that they were good for a lot of murders.
Now, authorities in 10 jurisdictions across 3 states must decide how to proceed.
Every one of those jurisdictions wanted a piece of her as far as how to get her involved in their respective cases.
They agree that Gerald and Charlene will be prosecuted in California and Nevada for the murders of Mary Beth Sowers, Craig Miller, Stacy Redican, and Karen Twiggs. Charlene will be spared a death sentence.
Charlene's sentence in this case was a collective agreement of all the 10 jurisdictions, 16 2/3 years. The agreement was for her to do every day of that without any early release or anything else.
The deal with Charlene was that if she ever lied to us, all bets were off, and that she would be charged with all the murders and the kidnappings and all the crimes. So there was a lot of intensive interrogation of Charlene.
But Charlene doesn't just talk about the murders.
We took Charlene back to all the places where an abduction took place, where a murder took place, a sex assault took place throughout Sacramento County, up to Oregon, throughout Nevada, and interviewed her on the spot.
And she would point out exactly where things took place, and it would be videotaped.
We were fishing and came from that direction, just to stop here. And Jerry's got the gun still right out there. It's all light. There's light. Then go back out this way and head up on the freeway, and then out down onto 50 and out to the Wood Hollow apartment. First of all, we stopped just up a ways, up that way, where Jerry took the body out. I came up this road, and this is where I turned around.
And what?
And then proceeded back down that way. And then as I'm going down that way and I'm going slow, Jerry gets back in the van, and then we head back towards Wood Hollow.
However, with all the information Charlene provides, there is one question still on everyone's mind.
Why? Why didn't you stop? Why didn't you drop a dime at some point and prevent somebody from getting murdered? I never really heard a good answer for why.
I think that Charlene didn't pursue anything because of fear that she was going to be the next victim. Does that make any sense? To me, it doesn't.
After a year of interviews and investigation, Gerald Gallego's trial begins.
What occurred in California was that his ego was still the major factor, and he decided that he was going to be a great lawyer and defend himself. And it turned out he did a very lousy job. He did more questions that incriminated himself than anything.
After 6 months of hearings, on June 21st, 1983, Gerald Gallego is sentenced to death for the murders of Mary Beth Sowers and Craig Miller. In November of 1983, as a result of her plea bargain, Charlene is formally sentenced to 16 years and 8 months in prison.
I think she should have gotten the death penalty too with all that involvement that she did. There's no excuse for that.
Gerald is then extradited to Nevada and is put on trial for the crimes against Karen Twiggs and Stacy Redican.
Gerald was sitting over to this side with his attorney. Gerald would often try to stare people down. He would try to do that when Charlene was testifying. And from time to time, I would run into him in the hallway with his attorneys, and he would try to do that stare down. Of course, it didn't work.
On June 25th, 1984, Gerald Gallego is again sentenced to death, this time for the murders of Stacy Redican and Karen Twiggs.
When a trial ends and you put somebody of his character away, it's a good feeling. I was elated when it was over with.
Every homicide investigator wants a career case. You want to be able to say that you worked a major investigation and, you know, that kind of thing. By the time that's done, you never hope to see another one like it.
After the second trial, Charlene returns to prison to serve out her sentence. And in August of 1997, at the age of 40, she is released on parole.
I would say that justice probably was not served. She only served less than 17 years for being a direct participant in 10 murders. I think that Charlene probably is not a threat to society at this stage of her life, but at the same time, I believe that she is the type of person that can be influenced easily by someone that has a strong personality. If that personality happens to be antisocial, and she's involved with such a person, then it certainly is possible that she could do the same type of thing, get involved in some murders.
She shouldn't be out of prison, first of all, and she should be executed.
More than 20 years after vanishing from the Washoe County Fair, the skeletal remains of Brenda Judd and Sandra Colley are unearthed in Lassen County, California.
Up until that point, you're always hoping that they are going to be found. You hope that you're the one that finds them. It's always there. I get a call from one of the parents, and all I said was, "Thank you." And I said, "Why thank me? I didn't return your daughters." And so you never really get away from it.
After managing to put off his execution for almost 2 decades, on July 18, 2002, at the age of 56, Gerald Gallego dies in prison from rectal cancer.
Had he not died in prison, I'm sure he would still be there, living on death row. And I'm sure his appeals would be going on today.
The fact that Gerald's death penalty was never carried out, it was a heartbreaker to me. I wanted to go and watch him die. I absolutely did. I would have been right there, given the pill or pulled the lever or whatever it was. Oh yeah, there's no doubt about that.